I just hit start recording.
Yeah, there, good. There it goes.
Yes. So, chapter 3 is about systems, and the Nella Valley is just some great stuff if you're interested in that. And Deming talks about systems, and he talks about in system of profound knowledge. He talks about appreciation for a system. You don't have to become experts in systems thinking. You have to recognize that a system has one of the things Marsekoff points out over and over again. For something to be a system, there has to be interdependency, which is different from dependency. Like the heart and the lungs and the muscles are interdependent. If what the heart is doing depends on what the lungs are doing. Yes.
Tim, you're
Yes.
coming through very garbled.
Oops.
I don't know if you can turn off your audio in settings and turn it back on, or if you can log off and log back in. It is pretty bad.
And Leslie,
Monica and Bill Bellis have joined.
that's what he was saying before. That's it's a blank account on his computer.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So Leslie, while he's trying to do that, on page 39, his famous diagram of a system, the boundary of a system. Can you talk to us and talk to Adam and myself about it? I've seen this for many years, and people describe it many different ways, but people always go back to this. This is, fundamental. So explain that.
It's
Which
funny you say
figure-
that because we
Which
took
figure are you
this.
referring to?
I'm sorry, Adam?
Which figure? What's the title of since we have different editions that you're referring
Figure
to?
6.
Figure
six.
six.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Leslie.
Well, for the Deming Institute, we revised this, of course, and the way it looks, both for the live seminar and for the online course.
Yeah.
And the way I describe it anyway is it is iterative. So basically,
What do you mean by that?
so in other words, it is going to loop back around. So for instance,
okay.
yeah, and I don't mean in a just completely circular method either, because so basically you have inputs. Your inputs are on the left. So your inputs are your suppliers, your materials, your equipment. And then they enter a process, and that's the center part. You've got, and they could enter multiple processes: production, assembly, inspection. And what we have in our diagram is underneath production, assembly, inspection, there's actually, we've turned this sort of into boxes. So it's a fill in the blank, fill in the boxes. So you have your inputs, you fill in your inputs on the left, they enter a process. The process can have sub-processes, and the sub-processes can have sub-processes beneath them. And that's part of the iterative. The sub-processes are going to come back up and affect the processes. And then as you go through your process, you're going to end up with your outputs. And that's where these arrows are on the right. So your outputs are distribution, consumer, whatever. You have your input, you have got your process, and you have your outputs. And then it's let's go back, consumer research, design, and redesign testing. And we're going to go back around, because once you do that, you have your ongoing improvement. So you're going to go back and it's going to affect your inputs. And
so the question, thank you for that. So
Sure.
The question for Toyota, Lean, and other things, they have an information flow
yes,
that is flowing, which doesn't show up on here. And given how important information is when Deming was there, and extremely now with all the technology, AI, and all this with information how would you update this? Not that we don't want to, because this was his thinking, but how would you update to get flows in this? Because it doesn't show in this.
I'm wondering, how do I share? Okay, I'm going to share my sound too. Does anybody mind if I share my screen?
No, go ahead.
I'll show you how we updated it anyway. First, I have to share my screen. Do you all see my screen?
Yes,
I
I
gotta
can
go
see it.
back. Shoot, maybe I have to stop sharing. Okay, this time when I share, I have to hit share sound. Okay, here we go. Optimize for video sharing. Okay, so this is how we did it.
Every system has inputs, which we call here.
At the beginning.
Let's look at a visualization of a Deming flow diagram. Later, you'll personalize it for your role or organization. Every system has inputs, which we call here contributions or conditions. They include everything from people and training to methods, customer feedback, and more. And there are throughputs, which we call here the core activities of the organization. The core activities listed depend on the process. If you're looking at a high level, they might include innovation, marketing, or sales. At a process level, such as for making a sale, core activities might include acquiring contact lists, creating call scripts, or writing proposals. The result is outputs. Your organization might produce a product, a service, or both. Whatever you do has inputs, throughputs, and outputs. The outputs usually include both positives and negatives. For example, if you provide physical therapy services, a positive output would be helping patients get better. A negative output might be time wasted not seeing patients because your patient scheduling method is inefficient. Notice the system is a loop or cycle. Thus, feedback from customers and insights from market research, for example, can improve the effectiveness and efficiency of the process or business overall. Based on these discoveries and insights, design and redesign decisions need to be made from time to time to predict future consumer needs as well as deliver what the customers currently want. We recognize that every system has subsystems, and within those subsystems, processes are nested, and within those processes are people who can continually improve them. With Deming, we recognize the powerful interconnections of people.
I won't bore you continuing on, but that's along the lines of how we modernized that chart.
Okay, again, that modernize it, but it doesn't take into account, or what I was speaking of, the flow of information that happens in processes in between departments and all that. Forget the positive and negative and the customer feedback within a company, all of that flow of information. Everything we have on what you show left to right, and then there's a big loop once it's done, as opposed to the flow of information internally. So just a thought.
No, I agree completely. And that's where sort of the complexity of Deming comes in, because here you have a chart and you're modernizing the chart to try and explain what Deming meant by the chart, but it doesn't work if you don't understand psychology and silos and how people communicate and variation within systems and everything, that you're talking about. So everything you have to go back and apply all parts of SOPK to it.
Right, but what I'm saying is the system doesn't appear, no matter how sophisticated from a Deming perspective you are, to account for that internal flows in that middle part of the or even the flows between the middle part and suppliers. Bellows will, Dr. Bellows will talk about, well, supplier gave us something and the screw is bigger than the nut, so forth.
Right.
Well, there's got to be a feedback to the suppliers, but none of that is none of those flows, but the feedbacks internally are shown in Deming. And that's why I was curious. Everyone starts with the Deming from this book, but it doesn't have those internal flows that are going to make a supply chain or a value chain.
Yeah, and you said internal, but you did bring up suppliers and external too. So they need to be part of it, the flow as well.
Yeah.
And you brought up lean. I don't know, I admit, I don't know hardly anything about lean. How does that relate to what lean does?
Let's not go there.
Okay.
We're here for Deming. Let's just not even go there. I was just particularly, and Adam, this particular drawing, that figure 6 is fundamental, and everyone refers to it. So that's why I wanted to come back to that and just discuss it a little, because it is so integral to so much in this book and other things.
Guys, you know,
Yeah, I was surprised to see it because I had actually seen it in one of the NASA flowcharts. It's almost identical, just with different inputs and output wordings for their phases. So it was nice to see it again, but written in the template that it was based on.
Yeah.
You know, I'm flipping through this chapter and I'm not sure even Deming talks about what you're saying, Dennis.
He doesn't, but
Yeah.
that's because yeah, he doesn't, and flows and now that information flows were important back then. They were just done on paper. You know, everything was done, which is what it took everything so long. Now you have computers and ERP systems where flows are going back and forth, but it's still, you know, it's still very crucial to have flows in the system. And it's nothing, it's not saying that this is wrong. It's just, this is a simplified version. And then you have to make sure that you explain flows into a system. And then it gets into, you know, he talks later about the dynamics of a system and so forth.
Yeah, I think the closest I've seen anybody get to what you're saying is by incorporating the psychology piece in and saying that, you know, people do not do well when they work in a vacuum and don't understand where they fit into the system and who they're impacting upstream and downstream from their particular job. And that's as close as I've seen people come to that.
Yeah, or another example is in the middle section, you have your boxes going, and their boxes are siloed.
Yes,
Right?
they are.
And,
Well,
and you
no,
don't
the
have,
boxes have they had, you may not realize this, but the boxes had moving dots going in and out of each one, back and forth in both directions.
okay, good. Because that doesn't, when you showed yours, I wasn't able to pick that up. So
Yeah.
so that might be something in the future to, whenever you
To
make
narrate, to
update.
make sure people are
Yeah.
clear, because there really is a flow in and out of every box toward each other, not just forward, but backwards too.
Yeah, and that's what systems thinking is. We're all connected, as Tim was saying earlier. You know, we're all, you know, we're all connected, we're all one. Well, you need to be connected going both ways. And so highlighting that either verbally or, you know, different arrows to show that, you know, for the next iteration, because you got so much time and money to do that. I know you can do that, right? So Adam, are you still there, Adam?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so without Tim here, in chapter 3, what questions, you know, we have 15 minutes left in this chapter. What questions do you have in chapter 3 without me going on some rabbit hole like I just did?
I don't have a specific question, but there were parts that really made me think a lot, which was, for example, the phrase, I'm sure it'll never happen, but I like the thought of it would be better if all the competitors would use the time and energy that they had to expand the market, that they would all gain. I liked listening to that perspective and thinking about, you know, the different products that I've bought and price changes over the years. I give an example of you know, certain goods and services have gone way up. I understand there's a lot of factors for inflation and whatnot, but and then you look at other ones like an Aldi or a Costco, and sometimes they've risen a little bit, but I think they understand that they'd rather have everybody come in than just some people at the higher price point. So I like reading
So
about that.
let me give you an example of a real life example of where this, you know, we said all competitors working in the same page type thing. Toyota, as we all know, came up with the Prius and the first, with the hybrid, it made the hybrid in the 90s. And then everyone in the last 10 years is working on electric. But what Toyota has been doing, they've spent over, I think it's 15 to 20 billion already on hydrogen. Toyota is banking, and by the year 250, 25 years from now, hydrogen is going to be. But what they've done is they've made all of their patents and all of their work open source for hydrogen development. And they're, so that their competitors could see it. And their idea is, well, we're having the trouble. Let's, get the whole community working on it. And besides, if someone else is working, we're still 10 years ahead of them anyway. But they've opened it instead of trying to keep it all, to themselves, that working with the whole automotive community for hydrogen powered cars in the future is the way to go. So it's just an interesting way of how a large company, let alone small companies, can do this and get along with their competitors. Does
Yeah,
that make sense?
I'm glad to see that there's a large scale company doing it. I've seen it, in smaller communities online, mostly for code or for other programs, but it's nice to see that it can be done on a larger scale as well.
Well, and another example would be Patagonia. Patagonia started X number of years ago, I can't remember how many, where you can recycle clothing. That they have bins where they take the clothing in their shops, they then take it to a current, a central place. They wash them, they decide, well, can we reuse them, or can we break them up into subparts and do so forth and so on. And they've shared that with other of their competitors of how to do that, because they want people to be more sustainable in clothing, because so many people throw clothing away. And Land's End has modeled their system on what Patagonia does. And Patagonia is trying to help others to do the same thing, because fast fashion is really not very sustainable. And so Patagonia is another example of a company that's sharing what they're doing.
Okay, yeah, that's good to hear, especially in that one where there's not as much monetary gain, more of a a sustainability goal. Nice to see as well.
Leslie, any other comments about later on this chapter about the destruction of systems or things like that? Or Adam, as we're waiting for Leslie, go to figure 8. Go to figure 8.
Yep. Yeah, I was just about to say something about this one too.
Go ahead. This is another one that's, again, it's a major one. So go ahead.
Yeah, I immediately, when I saw figure 8, I just thought of airline companies, about how anybody would reasonably want B or C, even if you know that, for example, for C, even if you know that they're always late, that they're always late. So, okay, we've got a 15-minute buffer, but some of the, I looked at D and I immediately thought of a Spirit or a Frontier Airlines, and rather would want to take any of the other 3.
Well, have you heard of just in time from a transportation distribution standpoint?
No.
Have you heard of that? Well, just in time for delivery means that when you're delivering something, you want it to get there just in time, not before and not after. And the reason is, in practical terms, if you have an Amazon warehouse and you have 400 bays, okay, well, 200 bays, with trucks coming in and out. And there are 800 trucks waiting to get in, your time to be there is at 4 o'clock. If you're not there at 4 o'clock, you've given up your slot and they got someone else that's going to come in and you have to wait till your next slot comes open, and it could be an hour or two. And that's very inefficient for you, the driver waiting. It's also internally, they were ready to pull your stuff off. Now they can't, and they have to do something else. So it gets very inefficient. So on-time benchmarking is crucial for many parts of business from a distribution and transportation perspective, from an efficiency standpoint.
Is it a bit of if you're on time, if you're early, you're on time, and if you're on time, you're late?
Yeah, because if you're early, you're sitting there. You have to turn off, Tim, you have to turn off your mic. Okay. So I think. No. Tim, you have to turn off Monica and Bill Bellows. Turn off their sound. There we go. So if you're early, Adam, if I half an hour early and I can't be used, I'm paying for this truck driver to sit around for a half an hour. That's not very efficient. And there could be other, where is he going to park, and so forth and so on. So the closer you can get to on-time performance, the reducing of waste, the more efficient you'll get.
Right, but how do we even begin to address that in a chapter on systems if you don't understand variation?
Oh, exactly. And then what's common cause and
Special cause, yeah.
special cause,
Yeah.
and that's why I think what makes SOPK so powerful is the focus on variation. And if anyone knows about variation, Deming knows more than anyone I can think of. And so and it applies in so many cases. But yes, you need to, that's why SOPK is so powerful, because you're able to then address the variation issue. And then how do you, is it special or is it common? If it's common, it's a management system issue. And then what do you do to, how do you address it? And is it one department? Is it all departments? Information flow, all that. So it becomes very interesting there.
What I think is interesting is leading into this figure 8, he writes, a system requires a name. Without a name, there is no system. But here's the part that's interesting. The aim is a value judgment.
Yeah.
And then he goes on to say, I suggest the following is the aim of our transportation system. So he's saying the aim of this chart is a value judgment.
Oh, sure, because it's a value. Does my company want to go as fast as we can to get there? We want to go at the speed limit to get there. We want to have smaller trucks to get there. They're all value judgments on how we've decided to operate the system. You might like the big, 48-foot, trucks, and you're going down the road just like Smokey and the Bandit, where I like the smaller trucks, and I can get around streets where you can't get into some alleys and stuff like that. So it's a value judgment, and you have to weight the pros and cons to come up with a value a transportation system, a hospital system, any system that you're working with.
Yeah, and he lists it as better quality of life. Well, maybe you have the snazzier seating in your truck, or protection of the environment. You have the electric truck, or
Yeah. Or you have these sleeper units. You can sleep in your truck instead of having the pull over because your time ran out and you just have to sit up, or you have to find a hotel, which costs all those different. Yes, it's a value judgment, and because each system, the Chinese system with their bullet trains is very different than our train system here, and so forth and so forth. That's a good call out. And, he goes at the bottom, lower and lower cost to the carrier. Well, that's just the race to the bottom and, where does quality fit in and so forth. So, better quality of life as it keeps going, so. Leslie, since you're the senior person and we have 2 minutes left, how would you like to conclude this?
I don't think I'm the senior person at all.
Yes, you are.
I think the way you concluded is Tim talks about what's coming up next. What's your plan, Tim? Can he talk?
No, I don't think so.
Uh-oh. He's typing. He can type. I hope.
Leslie, we have to market this. How do we get Tim not to be able to talk, And we can then market it, and how do we get our bosses not to talk? Or the classic, I read my comics every morning. How do we get our spouse not to talk? Or stuff like that. So we got to market whatever we did with Tim.
Make any noise.
Well, we heard a little of you, Tim.
I don't know. Sound, I guess. I got a mic, but it doesn't say it's muted, so I'm not sure.
We can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, we'll try chapter 4 next week. I think you guys did a good job on this one, even without my, let's see, guidance or obstruction, depends on your point of view, I guess. The chapter, he does talk about the information flow on page 42. It says that it's not only a chart of the material flow, it's a chart of the information flow that's needed to run the organization. And I think you guys did fine. And had I started the recording sooner, we'd have more to listen to if you listen back on what we said. Next week, chapter 4, which is profound knowledge, which is sort of the core of this thing, since his 14 points years ago when he came up with them. He said, if you apply the system of profound knowledge to transforming an organization, the 14 points are a natural output. There are still people trapped in the 14 points with the belief that you can pick and choose what points you want to implement. They don't see them as a system typically.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting too that he came up with his ideas before he had codified his theory. System of profound knowledge is his theory. The 14 points aren't a theory. They're an output of that theory. So that theory was kicking around in his head whether he codified it or not.
Yeah.
Partly what led him to codify it is he kept saying, knowledge is important. You got to have knowledge. And Clay Crawford Mason was doing some stuff with Deming and videos and trying to get an understanding of this stuff and get it recorded and published. He kept asking him, knowledge. And so Deming said profound knowledge. And then he had to go figure out what profound knowledge was. So he started working on it in 89 or 90, and it got up to as many as 6 items in it. And so there was some progress, some thinking he went through, and some of it got written down until he came up with the 4 items. That's all I've got, and I'll try to have things that don't go haywire.
And Leslie, thanks for joining us. It was nice to have you.
Oh, thank you. It's nice to be here. I thought I would drop in. I'm gonna go to the Intwin conference again this year, and I thought I'd drop in.
good.
Harry sent
I'll
me,
s-
and yeah.
Then I'll see you there.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.